All right, and we're back.
Bye.
The good, as much as I hate it losing our first chunk of that, at least we didn't have the chunk of me goofing up your name.
No, thank you for that.
No problem. That's okay. I have.
See, you're lucky to have a name like Jackson. Nobody can.
Right?
Jackson. It's like nobody can mess that name
Jackson.
up, right?
Yeah, honestly. Well, honestly, I had a guy, a buddy of mine, a writer, Brian Hershkowitz, who he's done a lot of things, but when I had him on and I had to say his name, man, and I in here I know it, but as it comes out, I said Herkowitz, and then I went, darn it. So
sounds like me back in my dating days. We'd have the same problem.
Really?
Yeah, I knew exactly what I wanted to say, but when it came time to be having dinner with this girl I had a crush on, it didn't work.
I know exactly what you mean. You're like, honest to God, I'm much more charming than I seem right now.
Hi, it's Paul Margolis, and you are listening to the one and only MacGyver podcast with Mac Jackson.
Hi, I'm Richard Dean Anderson.
Name's MacGyver. Colonel Jack O'Neill, SG-1.
My name is Pratt. Ernest Pratt.
I always get a happy, tingly feeling when I see those guys.
Name one contract that I failed to execute.
MacGyver. Oh, here we go.
You're a target. And I don't intend to miss.
Over my rotting corpse. I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Glowing eyes, cliche behavior, evilness, that kind of thing. Is mental illness contagious? You think? You can do anything you want to do if you put your mind. Well, you do have a penchant for pulling brilliant ideas out of your butt. Head. Out of your head when we need them. Oh, the stuff's already here. I just find a different way to use it. I like your attitude. Permission to take a team through the Stargate, sir.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the MacGyver podcast. I'm your host, Mac Jackson, and I'm proud to have on writer and story editor from MacGyver, Paul Margolis. Thank you for coming on, Paul.
Thank you, Mac.
Quick little edit for everybody. You missed about 10 minutes of great conversation because the darn thing didn't record. But we were just we were just talking about his
secret,
first episode.
the big secret that I can now not reveal. I told you.
It already happened. It's over.
You didn't record it, and I can't say it again. I'm sorry.
We were just saying about we just started going into Paul's time on MacGyver, and his first episode was Collision Course. And I had said that the thing about Paul's writing that really added to MacGyver was we got to get a little more backstory and depth into who MacGyver was that not everybody did. A lot of times, and I could say it, a lot of times they're great stories, but other than the MacGyverisms and Rick's personality, there's nothing really personal about MacGyver. But in your episodes, Collision Course being one of them, you really got into what makes MacGyver tick, what's his story before we ever met him. And in this case, it was MacGyver having caused the death of another driver, clipping him, I believe, in the race. They do the flashback and everything. And that really stood out as not just another episode. That and the fact that it was based on Rick's likes of racing. So you were saying about the secret, one of the things that pulled you in.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a writer, you come up with an idea for a story, and there are a million different ways you can go with it. Part of what, we talked about this a little bit earlier, part of what made this show so interesting was the kind of stoic personality of MacGyver, that he doesn't really want to share very much about who he is. He wants to make everything about the other person, helping the other person. he's not the kind of person that would sit over dinner and just like tell you everything about himself. And he
The
would want
meme
to,
monster. Yeah.
he would want to be talking about you. He would be wanting to talk about your life, and he would be sincerely interested in that. But he wouldn't want to go on about his own life. He wouldn't want to. And if you asked him something specific, he would probably uh, very courteously turn the conversation around to you again. Now, as a writer, I mean, I was absolutely fascinated with that. And so what I tried to do in each one of the episodes that I wrote, there are 4 that I wrote completely. I probably wrote another 20 or 30 as a story editor, rewrote some of them page 1 rewrites. But the 4 episodes that I wrote, each one of them, the question I asked myself was, what can I reveal about MacGyver that people don't know that will give you a little bit of a window into who he was. And there was that in Collision Course. There was one in the Black Corsage, which I wrote. There was one as well. And then the biggest one that I worked on, that was actually one of the things that I've written in my career that I was proudest of, was Black Rhino.
Sure.
Where I had a very specific scene that I wanted to write when I first came up with that idea, that was going to challenge MacGyver to his core in terms of his ethical core. We can talk about that in a minute if you want, but
yeah,
if you want to go back to Collision Course, we can do that.
Here's the thing. We have like 5 minutes left before I have to send the invite again.
Okay.
So we'll stay on Collision Course. Then when we come back, we'll jump onto others.
Okay.
But there's no rule. We could bounce around anyway. It's not.
By the way, just so I know how long we can talk, as long as you want.
Sure.
Just roughly, so I can kind of figure out my.
Sure. About an hour.
Perfect.
Yeah, because
Great.
we have this, and then there would be another 40 minutes. I think it gives you the window.
Okay.
But again, natural conversation. That's
Yeah,
what
great.
it's all about.
Loving it.
And the Collision Course is, again, could have been okay, this is the racing episode, but no, you gave us that dark side of him having doubts, not wanting to race again, even when he has to. And he comes up beforehand, when he comes up with the MacGyverism to fix the thing under the hood, he does it, but then he blames himself when the bad guy cuts the brake line and causes the crash. Well, everybody thinks it's MacGyver's fault. That never happened before. Throughout the entire series, nobody ever went, "Hey, pal, come here. Your MacGyverism didn't work. You almost killed that guy." And in this case, he's blaming him. The daughters even yell at him, "I hate you, MacGyver. I hate you." And she runs off.
Right.
That's heavy stuff. That's, because that will happen in somebody's life. Yeah, he's MacGyver, but maybe, and he's blaming himself. I love the line that he says, "Yeah, Pete, good old clever MacGyver can fix anything, right?" And is really like, disgusted with himself. That's the highlight of that episode for me. Because he's not an arrogant person. He goes, "Of course this will work." He'd never do that.
Right.
He's just trying his best. Everybody else thinks of him as special and a genius, but he's just, when they ask him, "Are you sure this is going to work?" Nope.
When somebody shows you their vulnerability, isn't that the thing that makes you love that person?
Yeah.
Like, we all think, if I tell somebody that I feel like a total failure and I'm worthless and if you say that to somebody, I mean, they're going to have the opposite of they're going to feel warmth towards you, because we're all feel like that. That's part of the human condition.
Right. Unless they're a complete monster, in which case.
Yeah. But I think that for an audience, again, I don't want to make a big deal about it was his performance. I wrote some words, but he delivered the performance.
Yeah.
But I think when you show people your, he never like made a big deal about MacGyver's, like, "Wow, that really worked." It just worked, and like he moved on. and I think that's what we love about him, that he doesn't, toot his own horn, and he does show his humanity and his vulnerability.
Exactly. And I'll tell you, one of the things that the reboot didn't bother with was they made him see. The trick with MacGyver is, yes, he's MacGyver. He's a genius at what he does. But the writing was always, he's not an expert in everything. He's not an arrogant. If he was arrogant, you'd go, get out of here. I don't care what you can do. You know, it has to be that humility over everything else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and with the reboot, they had him, he could speak every language. He knew everything. He was flawless. In which case the audience goes, no, that's not realistic.
You know what that reminds me of? Instagram, social media.
Right.
Everybody's posting perfect shots, beautiful. Everybody's smiling. Nobody has a problem. Everybody shows you how these beautiful cars and restaurants and trips and beautiful faces, and everybody's smiling, and nobody's saying, I'm drowning here.
Yeah, the mess behind this picture is
yeah.
Agreed.
And that's what and a lot of TV shows are doing that now, where everybody is just perfect, and the problem. Yeah, even if there's a serial killer, they have a problem for 5 minutes, and then they're onto their beautiful lives. It's a different way of approaching the storytelling process.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so subtle. Nobody ever shined a spotlight on it. You just go, I really love MacGyver. Even now, I mean, people who are just watching it for the first time now will go, how do you not love him? How do you, and it's because even though, like I said, nobody said, look, he's not the best fighter in the world. Like, he stumbles, he does these big swings. He's not an expert martial artist by any sense, but he's trying to learn. And you go, thank you. Because now I feel like I'm not being sold Hollywood magic.
Right.
I'm being shown a good moral person who's, by the way, that's the other thing about the shows, the episodes. They're not heavy-handed, ham-fisted preachiness.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
There's a message. Exactly. There is a heartwarming message, and it's true. But nobody's going, let me stand up on my soapbox and preach to the world of how everybody should be as perfect as I. That's a heck of a tightrope for a writer to write. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make sure I hit every thought that I had on this, because again, like I said, that trauma of MacGyver is such a great reveal. What did you know about, say, MacGyver beforehand? Like, it'd been on the air for 3 years already. What, were you already watching it? Did Steve have to say, here's the premise, or?
So I had been watching the show, and when Steve offered me the episode, I got to work learning the character, reading scripts, watching shows. Trying to remember how you watched shows back then,
right?
Because I don't think there was any DVDs then.
No. There wasn't even VHS.
There weren't even VHS
at the time.
So it's not like the executive producer could say, "Hey, I'm going to send you 5 episodes of the show on your computer." You didn't even have computers, as I remember.
Exactly. Yeah, it was you got to watch it when it originally aired, and if you missed it, you had to wait till the summer.
Right.
One time, and then it was gone.
So I think I was watching the show, and if memory serves, there was I was too proud probably to ask Steve Downing for some scripts. But there was a famous old bookstore in Hollywood that was like the script church. Like, they had scripts of every show so I went there. I think I bought 4 or 5 MacGyver scripts.
Wow.
And studied them carefully and could see the basic breakdown structure, and got a sense of the character. And also I knew that I was going to be rewritten, like it was, part of writing is rewriting. So I might not get it exactly right, but I was very confident I could get the basics down in a draft, and then we could have, Steve was very hands-on with each episode. He's a real perfectionist, and as with that episode and all the others I wrote, we really spent hours and hours going over everything to make sure it tracked perfectly. So I don't really honestly remember the writing process, but
Sure.
probably, I had an idea of what MacGyver was, and I had a pretty good story sense, and I banged out what I thought was a very strong first draft, and then probably sat down with Steve, and he said, you got this and this right, but this stuff here, we got to really redo all this stuff. And so and Steve was, Steve, honestly, I mean, I like to think I was such a great writer, but he had a sixth sense about character and story construction that went into every episode. No script went to pre-production until he had really taken a very good hard look at it and seen if made sure every possible strength had been fully exploited, and anything that didn't really track in terms of what the basic theme of the show was had been deleted.
And you were saying, you started to tell me that I had hit upon one of the things with your writing of an episode that you wanted to do with MacGyver was give us more. Did you really? What was it? Because again, like I said, in your episode, you do give us deeper connection and understanding than maybe other episodes had before.
Yeah, I think the best way to talk about that is if we talk about one particular episode,
Black Rhino.
Black Rhino, which was my favorite episode that I wrote. One of the things I'm most proud of writing. One of the things that was probably the most unlikely MacGyver episode, and where when I first had the concept, there was a very specific scene that I had in mind. I wasn't sure what the whole story was yet, but I had a scene that I knew was going to be the heart and soul of that episode. And I think it's the reason that for a lot of people, it became one of their favorite episodes.
Okay.
So let's talk about Black Rhino, if you feel like it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So let me start by saying, how in the world did Black Rhino get made?
Right.
Right. MacGyver goes to Africa.
Well,
I mean, come
I
on.
can't just go to Africa. Well, that's the thing. I mean, you put it in the script where he's like, Pete, I can't just go to Africa.
Right. Yeah, but let's think about this for a second. We were shooting MacGyver in Vancouver, and it was fall already in Vancouver. It was starting to get cold, and what happened was I read the New York Times every morning, and I was reading an article that the black rhinos were being poached to extinction in Africa. And so, of course, MacGyver was on my brain 23 out of 24 hours a day. So I thought, great, MacGyver goes to Africa. Now, most writers wouldn't even dare to walk into the office of the executive producer, showrunner, and say, hey, I got a great idea. But Steve, bless his soul, had told all of us story editors, if you ever have a great idea, I don't care how crazy it is. I don't care how hard it will be to produce. We're going to do it. Wow.
Yeah, really. Honestly.
What a tremendous, opportunity for a writer to have a producer say that to them.
And not have to fight with ego either.
Yeah, no ego. So I walked into his office and I said, hey, I got a great idea, Steve. The guy goes to Africa. He goes to Africa and he saves the black rhinos from extinction. And he said, I love it. Let's do it. So he was just telling me something I did not know, which is as soon as that meeting was over, he then started the process of Paramount buying an animatronic Rhino at the cost of $50,000, which at that time was a lot of money for an episodic show.
Yeah.
They hired the guy who created E.T. in E.T. to build an animatronic Rhino, which was at the heart of this one scene I had just told you about. That was the heart of the show. And even, I mean, that shows you how much faith he had in me to write the episode. I didn't know that he had done that, even before I turned in the script. So that's kind of amazing and heartwarming, actually. The scene that I had in mind, which I think is what's interesting about this scene, I'll tell you the scene I had in mind and how it ended up being shot, which was different, and why it was different.
Okay.
Scene I had in mind was MacGyver connects with a female game ranger in Africa, and who's been trying to stop the poaching of the black rhinos. Their horns are being chopped off because in Asia, especially, the horns are valued for their, for lots of different reasons.
Masculinity and all
that. Yeah, all these things. And so MacGyver comes, and while they're having a conversation about the poaching, a transmission comes over the walkie-talkie that some poachers have just been caught after hacking the horns off a black rhino. And so MacGyver and this woman game ranger rush to the scene, and there we see this rhino that's still alive, groaning in agony, this animatronic rhino, bloodied, its horns have been chopped off, is just lying there in the grass. And the woman, and MacGyver, the way I wrote it, MacGyver has grabbed the rifle out of the hands of one of these poachers, and the poachers have been handcuffed and have been taken away. And here's this rhino, and here's MacGyver with a rifle in his hand, and this rhino is these plaintive wails of this rhino. It's in agony.
Yeah.
And so the way I wrote it was that MacGyver, who, as you probably know, never holds a gun, never uses a gun.
Right.
In this moment of just sheer,
that's a tough choice.
Overcome. Yeah, he's faced with a moral dilemma. He never shoots a gun, but here is this dying animal in front of him. What's he going to do?
What are you going to do?
That, to me, that was the whole episode.
And it would have been.
And you see on his face, the way I wrote it, you see him tortured, and the woman game ranger, just overcome. I'm sorry that I'm being so. I'm just trying to remember exactly.
I'm with you.
But in the first draft, I had him lift the gun and kill the rhino.
Oh, okay.
Kills the rhino in just a moment, a tortured moment.
Sure. Like, what do you do?
And then,
do you let him suffer? Or do you put him out of his misery?
And then complete silence and cut to black. That also was something that had never been done on the show, where they didn't have a musical cue at the end of the act to go to commercial. The shot fires, and there's complete silence, and they pull back on this dead rhino, and the two of them standing there. Okay, well, so in pre-production, that's when this problem started, because he had a very big problem with, he said MacGyver would never shoot.
Rick?
Yeah. Rick said MacGyver will not even hold a gun. So in a second draft, I tried to lessen the situation by MacGyver grabbing the rifle and then standing there, because he just grabbed it from this poacher. Which, you can understand him doing that, even though he doesn't take guns. And then he stands there in this agonizing moment, holding the gun, looking at the gun. The female game ranger seeing his agony, grabs the gun and shoots and kills the Rhino.
Okay.
Okay. I thought that was a good rewrite,
Sure.
but I still thought, it took away from the true moral dilemma that I thought was so fascinating. The scene that got shot was that, because again, Rick could not see himself holding a gun. He said MacGyver will not hold a gun.
Sure.
So we ended up, excuse me, we ended up with the final draft was where the female game ranger grabs the rifle out of the hands of the poacher. And we just have like half a minute of going back and forth, watching the Rhino, watching MacGyver's expression, watching the female game ranger, who was actually the wife of James Earl Jones, by the way.
Cecilia, yeah.
Yeah, Cecilia was wonderful. And she finally just lifts that rifle and shoots the Rhino.
And she plays it well too, because she's hesitant. Like she is crying and has to, lets the moment play.
Yeah. Now, to me as a writer, again, with great respect to Rick and to the show, as a writer, I think the more powerful scene is for MacGyver and the more active scene is for MacGyver to have the gun. Because I thought he's the one, he's faced with something. For him to be standing on the sidelines while basically, and just like looking at the Rhino and suffering for the Rhino, it didn't have the same emotional impact to me. That's just me.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll tell you. By the way, it played great because it does. There is no. Coincidentally, it happened to be on TV yesterday, and I was watching it. It's like,
how cool.
Yeah, I was like, you must have known that I was going to be talking with them.
Wow.
So I watched that scene, and again, I've seen it a trillion times, but there is no music cue. It does do the pan out and the quiet before it goes to commercial, and it plays very heavy, which is great. I think, and you would have to tell me, but if MacGyver had pulled the trigger, I think that would have been what the rest of the episode would have had to have been about. Because I don't see him going boom, and then, all right, now let's go get the poachers. Like, I think.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's a very good comment. I do think that there was the need for him to be thinking about whether he could do it, at least.
I agreed.
And so the second draft of the woman taking it out of his hands solves that problem.
Agreed.
And makes him more active. I think the fact that he's just sitting there, but it's a powerful scene. He was able to bring a lot of heart and emotion to that scene, and so it still works. And that's a great example too of different drafts, different ways of handling a scene. If the basics are there, it's going to work. Maybe it won't work. Maybe for some people might have been offended. They might have been very angry. Yeah, we love this Rhino, but what the heck? You've made us fall in love with this guy who would never touch a gun, and now you're going to make him fire a gun?
Right.
Some people would have been furious about that.
There would have been a lot of debate, even to this day, of he was ending its suffering, but he was touching the gun. Da. My son, by the way, catches the scene. He's 13, and he watches. He goes, "Whoa!" Because you can't tell that that's not a real Rhino.
It looks real. And
the crying that it does, your heart, aches for it. And that whole moment, my son goes, "Whoa, that's heavy. Wow. That's really disturbing." I'm like, good. That's what they wanted. They wanted you to see what's going on.
Right.
And of course, coming back, it plays well because Rick comes back, he gets out of the car, and he's like covering his face. He goes, Kate, I got to tell you, that is the sickest, most inhumane thing I've ever seen in my entire life. That moment, good, because it doesn't just move on. It plays. It lets him digest it and be sickened by it, and then talk about it.
Right.
And I think that's, again, it never went preachy. It went, here's the cold, hard reality of what the world's dealing with.
Right. And
here's MacGyver very much disturbed over it.
Yeah. And you want to hear something crazy? I've got two crazy little anecdotes after that.
Go ahead.
One is that after that show first aired, I kind of, I wrote the script, I wrote all the drafts, went through the pre-production of it. I was on set, and then, the filming was over, and I went on to the next episode that I had to, as story editor, I had to rewrite somebody else's episode, and then another one after that. And I totally forgot about the show. When it finally aired, as shows air months after they're actually filmed.
Yeah.
So I totally forgotten about the show. Well, when the show aired, I actually started getting letters from kids, mainly kids, saying, thank you for letting us know about the Black Rhinos. We didn't know there was a problem. We just started a Black Rhino club at our school.
Wow.
In some small town in Ohio. Another kid, I just gave some of my money for my paper route to the World Wildlife Fund because of what your episode, and that was the first one of the very few times that I felt like, wow, the power of writing. It started from this little tiny idea to something we created, to something that people saw, to actually causing people to do things, and to be aware of something.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't understand what a heavy influence that show, let alone an episode, has on people.
Exactly.
To be more and to do more is
right.
Just that's part of what you want to know why I do this podcast. It's to celebrate you and everybody that's part of the show, because it wasn't just a show. It's it's a daily influence on myself, let alone everybody that listens. I know that they all chime in on the Facebook pages and let us know that this is so relevant daily to our lives. So
right.
That's a good testament to your writing.
Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome. What was the other anecdote you were going to say?
Oh, and then years and years later, I was invited to do a screenwriting workshop in New Zealand, and at the New Zealand Film Academy. So I went down there for that. They invited me to come to this thing, and in one of the classes I was teaching, I brought up, I wrote this episode called Black Rhino or something, and just in passing. And then after the class was over, this guy came over, and he said, he was like almost in tears. He said, I can't believe you're the person who wrote Black Rhino. That was my favorite, one of my favorite. That's the thing that made me want to become a screenwriter.
Wow.
I couldn't believe what I thought he was putting me on, but he was like, I just thought, wow, that's unbelievable. In another country. So again, you just don't know. I think writers often forget, for those of you people listening who are writers, often we forget what the reason we're doing what we're doing, which is to give something to somebody else.
Right.
And that we're not just writing it to just make a buck, or we're just, the whole reason for writing really is I have a beautiful idea about the human condition I want to share with you. And that can be very powerful.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, very powerful. Not that Black Rhino was, one of the great pieces of literature or anything, but it's those little things. I've had, as with you, I'm sure, those little encounters in life where just a little encounter, somebody said something to you at exactly the right time, or you saw something, you just saw something on the street that you've never forgotten because there was some look in the eyes of somebody, or and that is what life on this planet is all about. So
honest to God,
it was so humbling, and it just made me remember why I wanted to be a writer in the first place.
I'm with you. With my writing, it's yeah, you're right. It's not about the money, because if it was, I'd be broke. It's you're hoping to add something positive to the world, because after we're gone, you want to have something that stayed.
Right.
Hopefully it made a difference. And a lot of times I think, at least I never noticed it before I noticed it, a lot of writers get taken for granted. Yeah, I wrote on, you see a show or a comic, and like I collect comics. Well, in today's day and age, the writers and the artists get celebrated equally. Like you
Right.
see a writer of a book that you love,
Right.
it's like seeing, Madonna or whatever. And so that's like kind of what this is all about. It's to point out that, look, these are the guys who gave you those great scripts.
Hmm.
And it's so amazing how it like you said, I've had people approach me with my stuff and I'm like, really? You like what I do? Yeah. I'm like, thank
Let's see.
God. You never know, because you throw it out into the universe and it's gone. It's not yours anymore.
Hmm.
But it might never come back to you. So if anybody ever comes up with a nice thing to say, I know what you mean. You feel that warmth of, wow, it mattered. It really mattered. Another thing that I love that you did was in the Black Corsage, you expanded the Colton family.
Hmm.
How was that like? I know you wanted to get MacGyver in Africa. How did Billy Colton come about? Like, how did you throw that in there? Because I know Black Corsage was already out, so you already had Frank and Jesse Colton.
Right. So I don't remember what episode was the first episode where the Coltons were.
That was a season 4 episode.
Right.
With Bruce, actually.
Yeah. So as I remember, and again, my memory is not what it used to be.
I'm here for you. Don't worry about it.
I do remember thinking that there was an opportunity for expanding that family. It was just kind of the original Colt was kind of a cool character. And then the idea of creating, a family of bounty hunters, black bounty hunters, I thought was just a very cool concept. There was even some talk about that becoming a spin-off series, actually, at Paramount.
Yeah, there's the one episode that was a season 6 episode called The Coltons. That should have been a series. Just based on that alone, I'm like, how that's a great cast. It's a great premise. They all have their own distinct personalities.
That's right.
And Steve, actually, I had said something about that on the forum, on the Facebook page, and Steve jumped in and he goes, yeah, you know why it didn't work? You know why it didn't get picked up? Because they were black. And the executives didn't think that people cared about an hour-long action adventure show with black characters. And I thought, wow. Because at the time, they thought a half-hour comedy because you had the Cosby Show.
I thought that was one of the biggest missed opportunities in the world. I think that would have been a home run hit, actually.
Right? I mean, it was so good just on that one episode.
Yeah. And all the members of the family were different, and they were all doing different things. They had different skills. They had different, and there was this great sort of, and you know what? It was just an opportunity for kind-hearted friendship between black and white races.
Exactly.
Which we could use a lot of right now, actually.
Well, obviously, yeah. But that's the thing. Again, it was never preachy. It was never like, MacGyver makes a friend with the black family. Like, it's your people. That's
yeah.
It shouldn't have been, you don't need a spotlight on it. It's just the way things need to be.
That's right.
And that was one of those shows that never, again, wasn't preachy.
That's right.
Like, okay, so we move into the Black Corsage, which came before Black Rhino. Was it originally supposed to be the other Colton brother, Jesse? That was when you wrote it. Was Jesse the original brother, or did you create Frank on purpose?
Well, I'm going to have to confess to you that in preparation for our podcast, I did not look over these stories again, and it's been a long time. And I don't remember all the details about the shows.
Well, Jesse showed up in Mock Colton. That was season 4. And then you don't see him, and then you get Frank, who shows up in your episode, Black Corsage.
Right.
I didn't know if, like, you went...
I think it was probably a casting issue. Like, they couldn't get the guy who was the previous.
Sure.
So create a new character.
Huh. And it's a great casting with that one
Yeah,
too.
yeah. They got the
Cleavon
yeah,
Little. Woo.
that's right.
Come
At
on.
the time, that was a real coup to get him. So, and that was also because he was fairly substantial. That was a reason why it kind of opened up the whole Colton concept, I think, because he was open to doing a series, I think.
Was he? Oh, see, man, they should have.
Yeah.
Oh, that, and of
Yeah.
course you get Billy Colton in Black
Mhm.
Rhino, who, you know, okay, there's your dynamic. So
And Billy Colton was
Cuba Gooding Jr.
one of the first things he did. So
Right.
that was kind of cool.
Yeah, well, he had been
Yeah.
on a previous episode called The Challenge,
Right.
right? And then as a different character.
Yeah. But that was before he really took off as a,
Yeah.
Academy
Yeah.
Award-winning actor.
When he did, though, I'm like, that's Billy Colton. You're not going to tell me any differently. Clear. I know him from way back when.
Right.
It was only a couple years before, too.
Yeah.
With Black Corsage, tell me the premise, how you came about with that one.
So, so the premise was, to me, not as important as just, again, the thing like we talked about, the gun scene. And the thing that I was intrigued with in Black Corsage was the relationship with the dog.
Okay.
And let's see MacGyver hang out with this dog and see the relationship. And he's not the most dog, oriented person in the
he
world.
loves dogs, but I remember them addressing the fact that even that was the episode. I can't have a dog.
That's right.
I'm on the road all the time.
That's right. So it was kind of the cool thing of having the dog and being stuck with the dog. And the dog was very cute, by the way.
Yeah, Frog, right?
Yeah, Frog. Dog named Frog. So the other, the rest of it, we did have this part of the way that was structured. That episode was that the expo site in Vancouver was something they had never used before on an episode, and it was available. So we wanted to find a way to create a lot of action sequences in that very enclosed location that would make it very easy to shoot. So there's an example where I think, if I remember correctly, we wanted to create a action drama around something that happens at this particular site that forces us to stay there for most of the episode.
Well, I'm always fascinated at the technical aspect of it, where you had to come up with an idea of they're all looking for. They each had a piece of the
That's right.
map.
Yeah, I like the idea of the cellophane puzzle pieces that got laid on top of each other.
How'd you come up with that?
Cool. I don't remember.
Right? Because I mean that's unique, and I've seen some people try and do it since then, and I think they're watching that episode and taking from it.
Oh, that's flattering.
Right? But to make that work, you got to go, all right, is this realistic? Is this the way these guys would handle it? That was very clever. And
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Do you have to come up with the MacGyverisms, like when he goes into well, first of all, they're tied up, so they got to get out of that with Frog, with the fish cannery.
Oh, the fish cannery, right. That was another location that they wanted to shoot at that was available. And again, whenever we had MacGyvers, the writers were not the ones who really came up with the specific MacGyvers. Did you know that?
Yes.
Okay. So they had hired somebody that was basically MacGyver, personality, knew about how to take a piece of gum and a tinfoil and could actually create something. And so we would come up with we would sort of put MacGyver in a dilemma, and then we would turn to him to say, well, what's available? What could we do?
Okay.
I remember that I knew it was going to take place at a fish plant. And so I did some research about fish and found out that these, I think it was called the sheep's head fish, has these razor sharp teeth. So that seemed like, okay, we can use that somehow. I'm not sure how yet. And so those were the, I don't remember the exact specifics to be honest, but
Well, okay. So here's the setup. They're going down the road. They're going to get chopped up. They're yelling to Frog because they want him to bring.
that's right.
They want him to bring him the hose to hit the power box.
Right.
And I'm thinking, man, that's a shot in the dark. That's, had the way you wrote it, thank God, that's not what happened. It was because one, a dog isn't going to know to do such a thing. And two, had that played out that way, I think the audience would have went, no, but the way it does, the dog happens to step on the pedal, which shifts them and dumps them, which I thought, okay, good. I agree with that.
Yeah.
That was a good switch. That was a nice surprise.
Right.
Because
one thing I don't ever like to do in my writing is what I call result writing, which is you need something to happen, so you create something earlier that makes it happen. That's really like it's just kind of the low grade way to write.
Yeah.
A much more fun way to write is paint yourself into a corner. You have no idea how you're going to get out of this thing. Mm-hmm. That happened to me several times on MacGyver and my own shows and also other episodes where how the hell, and then as soon as you stop panicking, you realize that that's the key to a good episode. If you can't figure out how to get out of it, then the audience can't either.
There it is. And
then you have to you just have to keep brainstorming to come up with that little thing that's going to be the solution that was there all along.
Yeah. Well, like with the MacGyverism at the end where, he's hiding from the guys who are looking and he uses one of the displays. I'm like, oh, that's smart. It's practical.
Mm-hmm.
I could see why they would react the way, they're going to hear the sound. They're going to go towards the sound. They're going to try and grab the thing that they want. And then he comes up behind them and gets them.
So I've got a question for you, Mac.
All right.
You've been so incredibly complimentary to me. I would like to dare you to tell me about a scene or a plot twist or something that I wrote in one of the 4 episodes I wrote that you've seen that didn't quite work for you. Or a line of dialogue or something.
Okay. It's quite the challenge. And I'm trying to put on my critiquing hat, but
well, before you go on, I just want you to say you need to be 1,000% honest. You don't spare me.
I got you.
I really want to hear, just give it to me.
Friendship is based on honesty, so you're getting it.
Love it.
Okay. So I'll tell you this. I'll preference it with this. I've always said my enjoyment of an episode of MacGyver is how much he's in it. It sounds simple, but, Rick is great. And even just to watch him with his facial expressions reacting to somebody else's dialogue, I'm happy. I'll take it because he's entertaining. The episodes that I've never loved as much, there's 2. Twice Stung, which was a season 2 episode, and Jenny's Chance, which was written, I believe John Shepard wrote that one.
Mm-hmm.
And he understands because what they tried to do with those was to lessen the load off Rick by having it be everybody come together and we're all going to be a team. As the viewer, I don't care about that. I don't need the team. It's MacGyver. MacGyver's there. You can have Pete off to the side or Jack Dalton, but I want to see as much of MacGyver as I can. So not that there's anything wrong with those episodes, but if you lessen MacGyver's time, I don't care. And especially if he's pretending to be somebody he's not. You know what I mean? As much as I like Dexter, the alter ego nerdy character that he would do. Clever. But give me MacGyver. Because then the rest of that Jenny's Chance episode, he's not even in the last act. Because it's supposed to be him in a mask.
Right.
As an audience, where's MacGyver? Well, he was in the mask the whole time. I don't care.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going on. And there have been certain dialogue. The gun, for example. The last line in The Gun is a little heavy-handed when he goes, one down, and he says, yeah, only 38 billion to go. That came close to getting like, uh-oh, don't get preachy. But because it was the last line, you're able to let it go. That felt a little heavy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking
You're
at
really, you got your build up is amazing.
Thank you. It's the writer in me, I've learned from the best.
I'm holding on to my table.
All right, if I go through the 4 episodes that you gave me.
Okay.
We already talked about, had you not made the change, the part where they're yelling to the dog, bring us the hose frog, had that played out exactly the way it was supposed to look like it was going to, I would have had a big problem with that.
I got you.
Thankfully, through coincidence, they get saved by, and of course, the whole thing of MacGyver, I remember thinking, you could just throw yourselves over, maybe because you're tied together. Can't you ultimately throw yourselves over and land on the floor? You're going to break something.
Yeah.
But I thought, I played it off in my mind of they're tied together, so maybe there's no leverage. I'll let that go.
Right.
That
By the
would have
way,
been hard. Yeah.
Before you go on, it's very possible that I wrote the scene the way you would have had a big problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve Downing said, Paul, we can't do that.
Right.
we gotta rewrite that.
Yeah, because I mean,
so it's very possible that again, this is the writing process.
Sure. And you try stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, had the dog walked over with the hose, sprayed it up at the power thing, yeah, I think the audience to this day would have said, bull crap.
Right.
But thankfully it played out the way that it did.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, dialogue wise, out of those 4 episodes, I hate the fact that the little girl says, I hate you, MacGyver, I hate you, but tough noogies, she gets to feel that way. Because you don't want your hero being told you that you, but again, characters. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see. I love all the rest of it. Let's see. Collision Course, it said that. Oh, we already talked about this. Collision Course, had you not done the specific
flashbacks.
No, I didn't care for the flashbacks. It was the deeper character development with him doubting himself, and also everybody else around him going, boy, you really effed up this time, didn't you, MacGyver? Which never happens. Had it not been for that, I think the episode would have been just a racing car.
Right.
Because, the cars are going around.
Right. So again, I would love to take credit for all that. I honestly don't remember who, how those lines came to be. I want to take full credit, but the truth is, again, the writing process on a TV show, you're rewriting, you have other people rewriting with you, you have stars that want to change the lines. Sometimes you're right there on the set and they say the line, they say no, and they're filming. And he says, no, or something comes out by accident, it's very possible, because Rick was this kind of actor, it's very possible that some of the lines that you responded to most strongly in a favorable way, it's just like he was right there and he said, no, I got to say something about this, or I got to do that. And I get credit for it because, written by Paul Margolis.
Yeah.
So I don't remember the exact details, but I can tell you that writing is a collaborative process on a TV show.
Oh, sure. And, Rick Drew told me stories about how they would have to change something last minute, or if the script came in and it was good, but it needed something, So I get.
And even when you're shooting, Rick would have the confidence to say, I don't, that line doesn't, it doesn't come off my tongue. I gotta, or how about this situation? Why are we not addressing this? So
wow,
that's actually part of the magic. I love that. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I remember a writer telling me, the 2 writers that wrote the Harrison Ford movie Witness.
Okay.
Well, he's about going into Amish country and that thriller. And do you remember that?
Oh, movie? Yeah, classic.
Okay.
Sure.
So there's a line in that movie that is just one of the great lines, where he's in the kitchen of the Amish kitchen, and they've given him a cup of coffee or something, and he says, "Great cup of coffee, honey," or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's just a great line. No, nobody wrote that in the script. And the two writers won an Academy Award for that script.
Wow.
Nobody, they didn't write that line. He ad-libbed that line on set when they were filming, and they kept it in the movie.
Wow.
So there's a good example of just the process of actually filming something and working and reworking. That is what creates this symbiosis, the
Don't
synergy.
they call it a living script? Is that accurate?
I think that's a great description
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, because it's constantly growing and evolving.
Yeah. So I was, so I like to, I did work on the show. I did write these episodes, but there was the special icing on the cake that other people may have had a big hand in, actually. Steve Downing, certainly.
Sure.
Rick, I saw many situations where he had major input into a scene that ended up being the whole show,
Hmm. I'm telling, and it shows because, like I said, I'm watching it even the first time through, going, okay, I know what his response is going to be, because I understood him and that character so well that I'm like, he would say, and before I could say it, it would be said. I'm like, yeah, here I am in my room going, yeah, I knew how he would say it.
So can I put you on the spot again?
Always.
All right. How many seasons of MacGyver were there total?
7.
And so how many episodes?
Oof.
Come on, do your math.
No. Well, it's
So-
different.
so
It's different.
It's
that
over
way.
100. It's like 130
Right.
something. Okay. Do you have one absolutely all-time favorite episode? Come on, Mac.
No, and I'll tell you why. No, I can't do that. It's the same thing like saying, what's your favorite song, or what's your, you can't do that. It's too
Well, I can
limiting.
tell you what my favorite child is.
Oh, well, sure. That's easy. No, because, and again, the amazing, beautiful thing about MacGyver is, what mood are you in? What do you feel like watching? What episode? Because, yeah, there's the Murdoch episodes. Well, that's his arch enemy. We're going to have Murdoch in it? That's epic. Or Jack Dalton's in town. Ah, crap. So you got to watch him be kind of like frustrated through it. But I'll watch an episode from, say, 5th season because I want to see him walk in the door and make himself a cup of coffee or waxing his skis.
Right.
Remember how we talked about the quiet moments that mean so much to me?
Mm-hmm.
That's the longevity. So when I'm going to watch an episode with the family, because again, to the kids, it's new. That they're being well educated on good television. It's Stargate and MacGyver.
Well, how are your kids with all the other stuff they have to look at? How is your 13-year-old responding to MacGyver?
He has his own Swiss Army knife.
Wow.
He's my boy. He's luckily they're deep, smart, thinking, caring children that I am proud of. And so they don't need flashy lights and dumbed down TV. They've been raised to appreciate good dialogue and moral dilemma. And so, my daughter is 10, my son is 13, and they valued like, oh, we get to watch a MacGyver episode. All right. I want one where he's in the woods. See? So do you want the one where he's in the woods? Do you want the one where, he deals with this one person a certain way, or he has this type of debate? That's what motivates me to watch a particular episode. It's not like watch one. If you've seen one, you've seen them all. No,
Right.
no. Your episodes are, okay, let's talk about, moving on to give you a good example. Lost Amadeus. Lost Amadeus starts off with him bike riding on a Sunday.
That's right.
I love it.
Yep.
Give me more. I could watch an hour of that
Mhm.
because you're watching him live his life. He's not on a mission. If you going back to a critique, if you want to hear a critique, one thing I wish that was done in the later seasons, they stopped having him be on missions. It was a lot of he happens to be in the wrong place at the right time kind of thing, which are great. But I thought we should see him on the job more. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That would be the one criticism I had. Again,
That's interesting comment.
right? Yeah, because
Mhm.
again, if it's him being in the wrong place at the right time,
Mhm.
cool. But it shouldn't be every week. And
Right.
and I felt like, okay, why is everybody, he's bumping into these people in danger. When it happens too much, you go, I want to see him do his job. Send him overseas, or for
Right.
example, the Africa one, Black Rhino, that felt like Africa. It's still
Mhm.
outside Vancouver, but
No, I can't believe they did that, but they
that's
did.
amazing. I believe
Yeah.
that's Africa.
Yeah.
So Lost Amadeus. He's riding a bike with his neighbor who was briefly introduced in a previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidentally, Halloween nights, because he has the boat outside and they start talking. He goes,
Don't remember that. I don't
yeah.
remember that.
He goes, I'm your new neighbor. It's a shame you're moving out.
Oh, I
Well,
don't remember that.
he thinks it's Jack Dalton stealing all his stuff out of his houseboat. But in your episode, that character gets brought back. And they're, riding the bike, and there's just such charm. And we haven't even gotten into the thrust of the episode yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then he meets the zany girl who hits his bike with the car.
Right.
Tell me, what was the nugget of that?
So a couple things. One was there was a movie that Jonathan Demme, I believe, directed called Something Wild. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie about a crazy girl like Lulu in that episode, and just a sort of crazy road trip movie. And I just thought that was a very cool kind of character, the polar opposite of MacGyver in every way.
Yeah.
And I just thought putting these two kind of characters together would be very cool. And then I also was reading about, I guess, again, I'm an insatiable reader and insatiably curious about things. I was reading about Stradivari violins and how expensive they are. I have a friend who's a world-class cellist who mentioned how expensive her cello was one time. And it got me like so fascinated with that whole world. And so much so that actually that I went down to when I had the idea for something around a violin, I went to a very fine violin store in Seattle, drove down from Vancouver. He was like the guru he was the guy, if you wanted to buy a Stradivari on the West Coast, this was the guy. So I spent a whole day with him, and that was just fascinating around these violins. And, and so as being a writer, just you're partly a detective and partly a reporter. It's like, well, if somebody was going to steal, like, what would this be worth and how would you do it? And I remember him telling me in the shop, he said, how do you keep all these violins safe, and the halon gas system that they had in the shop. And, oh, that's perfect. We got to do, and then it sucks all the oxygen out of the room. Thought that's just
that was
perfect for
great.
MacGyver. So, again, part of the way you come up with great stuff as a writer, I think, is just to do great research. And you don't have to like sit there at your desk and just make this stuff up. You
look around.
You look around, and you ask questions, and you get to know people, and the thing that has always amazed me as a writer is that people love to tell you about what they do. Even like I've done a lot of police dramas, movies, thrillers involving bombs and all sorts of crazy stuff, and even people that won't talk to anybody else, even like $2,000 an hour lawyers and bomb squad detectives. And if you tell them, I'm writing a story about this area, would you give me 5 minutes of your time? Next thing you know, it's like 2 hours.
Yeah.
They love to talk about what they do, and you just can't scribble this stuff down fast enough. It's like all the best ideas, they have all the material, they have all the scenes. All you have to do is just ask the right questions.
And I'll tell you what, one of the MacGyver signature things is if he's tied up or needs to do something, it's that moment of,
And looking around.
you know,
That's right.
looking around. And it's not like a da, 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 but you feel it as the audience. You're like, oh, here it comes.
Right.
Just that quiet moment of, all right, let me look and see what's around us. And when he looks up and then he explains about the gas coming down, that's real. That's a realistic thing. These guys tied them up in the room with the expensive stuff. Great. You know, and the great thing too about, I mean, you made Lulu lovable. Lulu doesn't necessarily have to be lovable. She's a pain in the rear end.
It's true. And by the way, the middle name of my daughter behind me is Lulu also.
Yeah?
In honor of.
Really? Wow, that's cool. But yeah, she comes up, you kind of like, I like her. She's a lot to deal with. And MacGyver's like, no, seriously, I can walk from here. Like the whole time he's in the car, he's like, it's okay. I don't need the ride home. It you know, and to watch him like smile and try and like, okay, make up. He's trying to have a conversation with her, but she's so all over the place.
Right.
And the payoff is his reaction to everything. It's him going, you know, you like, you know, so do you like music? And she's talking about his age, and he mentions his age. And most importantly in that episode,
his name.
The name, the tease of the name.
Yeah. So that was one of the things I wanted to do in that episode. I knew I wanted to do a scene where we're going to have that tease.
That was a great tease because it's throughout the episode in a natural way. She's like, "What's your name, MacGyver? Is that your first name?" "I just go by MacGyver." And she's like, "What's your real name? You don't need to know." Like, you know.
And I think she says, "Let me see your driver's license."
Later on in the episode, she takes it. He goes, "What are you doing?" "I want to see."
That's your name,
huh?
That's your name. That's right.
I can see why you go by MacGyver.
Yeah.
So you know, as an audience, you're going, "Oh God, what is his first name?" That it's got to be something terrible.
Yeah.
How bad can it be? And when Rick said that the way he came up with Angus, you go, no, that makes sense. It feels like, yeah, that would be his name.
Yep.
You know, like something like Bernie or, you know, something nerdy wouldn't work. You know, or like Stace, like originally they had written in the script Stace or Stacy was his name. That doesn't work. But Angus, you go, yeah. It's enough. And then you were a script supervisor for just season 5?
Yes. I was I don't remember what my exact title was, but just for one
or editor
season.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you left for the movies? Is that what you were?
Then I was offered a feature, and I came back to LA to do a feature. And then did one feature after another for a while. Then got into other TV shows. And did a bunch of TV movies, and did some very bad Steven Seagal movie, and
Bruce McGill was in one of those, by the way. I don't know if it was the same one you worked on, but Bruce McGill plays the bad guy in one.
Very possible. I remember Bruce fondly. Remember a wonderful dinner we actually had once. He's a very interesting guy,
isn't he?
The bad guy in the Lost Amadeus and I became good friends, actually.
Really?
His name was Herb Edelman. He was a very well-known
he was on Golden Girls.
Comedy actor, right?
Yeah.
On Golden Girls. He passed away a few years ago, but after that show, we just became good friends on the show. And when I came back to LA and he lived in LA, we would always have these nice lunches, like once a month, and lament about all the problems of the film business.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, it's funny because Rick Drew and I will complain to each other if we see something that's just written terribly, i.e. the Not MacGyver show. I would like vent to him about it.
Got you.
I'd say that reboot is terrible.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have someone to actually go, am I wrong about this? Or, you know, to bounce the thoughts off of.
Yeah. Well, it's not really MacGyver.
Right.
It's just a different show. They just put the name MacGyver on it, but it's really a completely different show.
You're quoting exactly what I've always said. They just took the name and went, we're going to trick the audience into watching this.
That's exactly right.
You know, but again,
in every way.
It's over. That lasted 5 seasons. It's done. And it'll be forgotten, I'm sure.
Yeah. It won't have the lasting power of the original MacGyver.
Not at all. But
so I was a writer for, you know, I had a nice long run as a writer, and then I started, I mentioned I was invited down to New Zealand to do this writing thing. And then because of the success of that, I was invited down to Australia and New Zealand like 24 times to come down and do more extensive screenwriting workshops down there. That was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
And then what inevitably happens with writers is that you get aged out of the business.
Really?
Yeah.
Well,
I just
that's stupid.
I know, it's just a fact of life. So
Ugh.
slowly I saw my career starting to dip a little bit, and it became less and less fun trying to get jobs and some of these rewrites of stupid movies where the story editor was 12 years old, and it wasn't working anymore.
Yeah.
So so one day, 12 years ago, a tennis buddy of mine, tennis is my passion, tennis buddy of mine, I was on the court complaining about some stupid TV movie I was writing, and he said, Paul, he was a big manager at Coldwell Banker, real estate company. He said, you're not having fun as a writer anymore. Why don't you come over and be a real estate agent? Come over to the dark side.
Sure.
I said, thanks, Gary. Thanks a lot. I went home to my wife and I said, you won't believe what Gary said. Like, how stupid is this? She said, you've had such a great time as a writer, but it's not what it used to be. The business has changed. And what do you have to lose? So long story short, 12 years ago became a real estate agent. And I've been working you're probably just aghast at hearing this.
No, because there's a part of me that loves the idea of doing that. If it wasn't for all the classes and everything, I love exploring. And when my wife and I were house hunting both times in our starter home and then in the home we're in now,
right,
I loved it. I loved going into people's houses and seeing what's here and there, so I get that appeal.
Cool. And I was lucky in that the first couple of houses I sold were to, half of my friends thought I was insane and were aghast. And, the other half were like, this is kind of cool. And by the way, I'm selling my big $10 million house over here. Would you like to sell my house? So I was very lucky. And then I got into the luxury market very quickly. And so now I'm really, doing sort of the high end market in Beverly Hills and the West Side here in LA.
I was going to ask where you were. I didn't know if you were still in LA.
Yeah. And, I did 5 years ago, I did write a novel, which was something I'd always wanted to do. It's called The Naked Philosopher. It was well received. A thriller,
nice.
A father and son relationship set against a missing person story. And that was probably the thing was the most fun for me, because I got to write exactly what I wanted to write. I didn't have to, have all these notes from studio executives. And so that was a lot of fun. I'm glad I got the chance to write one novel, but I'm just, one day when the real estate stuff, when I'm getting too old for that anymore, I will go back to writing.
I was gonna. That's what I was gonna say.
Writing is an absolute passion for me.
Right.
There's
I couldn't stop if I wanted to. That's
you're a writer too.
Yeah, I couldn't stop if I wanted to.
Yeah. And so like you get in, is there any better feeling in the world than getting in the zone where you just say, okay, I'm just going to sit down for 5 minutes and write this down. And the next thing you know, it's like
yes.
14 hours later, your bladder is about to explode.
Yeah. But you're excited to see where these characters are going to go next. I'm like,
how did you come up with that stuff?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to be going back to it, and nothing would bring me more pleasure than that Steve Downing figures a way to bring back the original MacGyver.
Honest to God, yes.
And he says, Paul, would you like to work on this show? And I would be in hog heaven. That would be my dream of dreams.
Well, Rick has said, he goes, yeah, I would be MacGyver again, as long as they didn't try to make me 20 years old.
Did he really say that?
Sure. Yeah.
Oh my God, that would be amazing.
But again, he said you'd have to play me age appropriate, like I'm, and great. Yeah, because it's not, and I think that's the thing. I think he doesn't understand how much he matters to MacGyver. It's not the
Absolutely.
explosions. It's not the MacGyverisms. It's just him on screen. That's
Well, since you know that, I think it's incumbent upon you to put the Beatles back together.
oh god, the Beatles, you say?
No, I just mean figuratively speaking.
Oh, okay.
You got Rick over here. You're talking to all these people. You got Rick. You got Henry. You got Steve Downing. You got, I don't know. You should stir the pot a little bit.
I would love
who's there.
I met Rick a couple times, and the last time he said he would come on the podcast, but I'm stuck now because I don't have his email address and I don't want to be a pest. So I'm kind of like trying to get people to tap him on the shoulder and go, don't forget, he's waiting for you. Because the audience is going, love your show, but where the heck is Rick? We're waiting for Rick to come,
Yeah.
And because of Steve, I got to get a hold of Bruce McGill. So he's a wonderful guy that I had on. Got to get Michael DeBar on, so
Michael DeBar.
Right. And Henry,
Sure.
if I can get a hold of Henry, I know he'd have a good time coming on too. But again, it's a tricky tightrope because greasy wheel, was it? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but at the same time, I don't want to be a pest. You know what I mean?
Why do you feel you're being a pest?
Well, how often can you remind somebody? Like, I can't go, hey, Rick, hey, Rick, hey, Rick, hey, Rick, hey, Rick, hey, because now you take away from, like, this is fun. This is me and you talking. We're having a great conversation. It's natural. I would hate for someone to feel like, I got to do that show. Like, if it's not fun, why do it? Like, I want the celebratory feeling of what this all is to be there. And I think Rick might be afraid of, if you've ever watched an interview with him, people tend to ask him the same 5 questions over and over again. And I wouldn't do that. Like, mine's.
That's why it might work with you.
I agree.
And from what I understand, you are the person that kind of gets the show better than anybody out there right now.
Thank you. Yeah,
I think you've got that rep out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And so there's something there, And if anybody is going to be the messenger, I think it should be you.
I will do my best.
And maybe rather you just need to ask directly.
Okay.
And just say, you know what? Here it is. Call me crazy, but I think that there's a need in this world of forgettable television, and there's something very special that could happen here. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the original chefs in the kitchen would probably be part of this.
Definitely.
And I think that's. Wow, that would be amazing.
I will start that. I will.
Really?
It'll help if I can get a hold of, getting Rick on the show. I think that's step number 1, but getting Henry on. Yeah. I would share those thoughts with him, and he has the power to make that happen, I think.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
absolutely.
Let's start that push, huh?
Love it.
I love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. This was a pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, me too. I like, again, big thanks to Steve for connecting us, because he knows.
He's the best. Steve is the best.
Right? I always say that I only have people on the show that I admire, respect, and are good people. And so, like I said, Steve sent me the email saying, I got a good person for you, because he knows.
Well, that's awfully nice of him.
Yeah. And I thank you for, as I said before, either on the air or off the air, your writing matters and has mattered to not only my enjoyment, but my development as a human being. So,
wow. Well, thank you so much. May I send you a copy of my novel?
Please. Are you kidding?
I'll write a little inscription in it. And
of course.
If you just give me your mailing address, I'll send it off to you.
That's very sweet of you. I will love and cherish that all the days of my life. And
just email me your address.
I will.
And let's keep the conversation going. And if anything comes of this idea that just,
I will keep you
together. Tell the powers that be I would be happy to be the secretary, the water boy, whatever, just on that project. That would be an amazing project.
Okay.
Right?
I definitely. Are you on social media?
Yeah, but only really in real estate.
That's okay. I mean, if you're on Facebook, I'll find you.
Yeah.
And that way we'll connect, and I'll occasionally send you any news or gossip, or
Great.
or even just to
Absolutely.
check in and say hi,
Yeah. If you're ever in LA, please let's grab nice lunch or something.
I would. Oh man, God, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I'm in Pennsylvania, but that'll be on my
Yeah, when you come out for your meeting with Henry and Rick, then we can have breakfast or lunch. How's that?
Oh, you're getting me excited.
All
Okay.
right?
I will
Okay.
talk to you later, and thanks again.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Mac. Have a good Sunday.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. The MacGyver podcast is part of the Forever Adventure Network and made possible by donations to the Forever Adventure Network by Mac Jackson on Patreon. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever podcasts are heard. And follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And remember, stay creative, everyone.
The Forever Adventure Network. Welcome to the adventure.